So welcome everyone, welcome friends and people who are just discovering this beautiful Sensitivity Summit. We're here today to explore sensitivity and the way it intersects with beauty and being a woman, and how we express our soul and our inner beauty into the world through the light that shines from within us and the way we dress and adorn ourselves. And I have a really special guest for you today, and I'm so excited to introduce you. Her name is Carrie Wilde. She's a women's leader. She's a soul stylist. She helps women to connect with the deep soul within themselves and to find ways that are unique to bring that out into the world. She helps women to connect with their beauty and their muse. And she also leads women's ceremony, and she's going to be speaking to us today from England. So I want to welcome you. Welcome, Kerry.
Oh, thank you so much, Myree. Oh, it's such a pleasure and an honor to be here in your presence. Thank you.
I'm so delighted. I'm really excited because I already know how much I'm going to learn and heal in your presence and the wisdom that you share. And I already know how much I've received from you. And I was wondering, before we dive in, can you just tell people a little bit more about the work that you do, if you were to expand that more?
Yeah. So the work that I do is really to guide women to come home to themselves on a deep level that is to connect to their inner beauty. So it's more of a down and in practice where we go down within the body and to really take full ownership and allyship and create that unique relationship and partnership with our body so that we can really feel and become more embodied as women. And so that's connecting to our feminine energy. And when we do this down and in kind of practice, we then can expand and reclaim and rise into our sovereignty. And that is when we then can dress and adorn and I work with women in a really tangible way. I've worked in fashion for many years as a stylist and also as a garment technologist, which means I'm just a geek on clothing, and I've visited factories globally. So I really have this keen eye of detail. I'm really into detail, and so I can really guide women of how to expand into their greatness through the vehicle of clothing and through the lens of beauty, so inner to outer beauty, and how that then blossoms into the world. I really feel that clothing matters. I feel like clothing is sacred, and I want to connect any women into that place of the fact that their second skin is so important. Actually, it creates a message to the world, it can create impact, and it brings us even more into alignment with ourselves.
Okay, so excuse me everybody, with a little bit of feedback then. Just listening to you share that opens up about 5 different questions that I'm going to put on hold, because I just want to dive into all of those places. I just want to let people know that also that Kerry is a dear friend of mine and a fellow yogi, and we met through at Rama Festival on the magical, mystical island of Mallorca last year, and we have this beautiful sort of deep feminine connection. So I also want to invite you to dream into this space that Kerry and I are holding today for you, because there's a lot of medicine. We're coming together as two women who've really delved into our bodies and what it's like to hold the sacred feminine within form, and that's vibrating in this space. So please not only enjoy the wisdom and the gifts that Kerry's sharing, but also the beautiful space that's holding us. And Kerry, in this work that you that you offer women around the world. Can you speak a little bit about the way you're called to do this work and what moves you so deeply and passionately? Because you're an amazing educator. And if this is the first time you've met Carrie, I deeply encourage you to follow her on Instagram because she is very generous.
Yeah, so the way this work moves out into the world, it starts with a mission, it starts with a dharma, and underneath the layers of, my why, I suppose, why I'm here, why I'm showing up in this way, is that I worked in fashion since I was a teenager. In fact, I started, my journey with clothing began when I was very young, and I explored dressing up in my mum's clothes. I used to, steal her clothes and take them to parties and like rock up in one of her dresses. And like my friends were like 10 years old, like, what are you doing? But actually clothing for me was a vehicle to express myself. So it was always a part of my life, and adornment was a part of my, not just playfulness, but also becoming somebody else. Like it was like I could feel that if I wore this, I would have a different response, and so I used to work with that quite a lot, especially when I reached my teens. So then I went into fashion. So I studied fashion. I went to university. I did a degree in fashion. It was my life, and I worked in all the kind of high street stores, and was on the fitting room saying, oh, I'll get you another one, and I'll try this one on. So my whole life has almost been centered around fashion. And then I went on to do a career in fashion. So I then began at head offices back in '99 in London. And when there was like fax machines and we had to fax to the Far East all the comments that we wanted them to do. And it was like, who are these people on the other end of the fax machine that are doing all the things that we want them to do? So it was kind of like, a 20-year-old kind of like doing all of these things, and then really feeling then this entity of who was actually making the garments was somebody so distant from me. I was literally in an office in London tapping away, having these lots of communication, but actually there was this hidden entity of the people that made the clothes. I couldn't feel them. I didn't know who they were. And then my journey, I then climbed the corporate ladder, as it were, and kind of was promoted and began to then travel and actually see these people globally. So I visited factories. I used to go and assess them, making sure that there was, the correct health and safety, but also making sure that our specifications of what we wanted to make was feasible in the factories that we were working with. So it was really technical, my job, and it was very much, I would fit garments in the office on models, and to make sure that the fit was correct and the quality was right, and all of the fine detail. And then I would go and fly off to India or Bangladesh or or China, and to make sure that the factories would be able to follow what we wanted. And when I met the people in the factory, I realized that there was a whole, the amount of poverty, I hadn't seen anything like that in my life. So it was like, oh, people are living like this, like completely different to us in the West. And it was such an eye-opener that these people were in the factories and they would have to go, like, especially in China, they would have Chinese New Year off, and they would go, and that still happens, apart from, this year is a bit different, but they would go up back to visit their families in the north and take the money home. But then for the rest of the year, they would be working these 6 days of a week, so many hours of the day in the factory, living in the dorms, not seeing the outside world. So, it was a culture shock. And also, there was a day in 2007, I stood in a factory, and a woman was so kind to me, and she looked at me, and but I could feel the love like emanating from her. And she was explaining a little bit about her story, but she was very hesitant to tell me too much, because obviously the factory manager is over there and I was asking lots of questions, and she wanted to, like, you know, be professional with me, but at the same time I could feel the grief and the, you know, leading to sensitivity. I started to realize that there was a frequency that was underlying, that everyone was not okay here. Everybody was not actually happy in this situation. There was an element of oppression and repression happening with these amazing, fruitful, abundant people. And what was happening is they were almost caged in this box of the factory environment. So underneath the kind of like, you know, fast fashion being something that I aspired to, I wanted to be successful in, this linear pathway of like earning more and then you'll be happier. If you get the house, then you'll be happy. I was totally climbing the capitalist dream. And then it all came crashing down, because around 2010, I had a massive, what would be termed as awakening now. And I know that that's what it was, but it was an illness that came and just said no. Like, I was set to go on a massive trip to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, all in 10 days, because I had a child. I wanted to fit it all in to this condensed time. And literally I got this labyrinthitis, where literally the whole world stopped for me, and I literally had dizzy spells in my home, and I crawled around my home for about 6 months. So it was almost like the goddess, or whoever we want to say, said, you need to stop and sit on that sofa and have a little think about what you're doing. So yeah, so to answer that question, yeah, the Dharma, there is a mission underneath all of the work that I share, because of my experience in fast fashion and what that showed me.
And if you could say a couple of sentences that might get you to turn your sound down a little bit on your end. Are you getting that feedback, Kerry?
I can't hear it, but
might just be at my end. Hi folks, we're just playing with the technical process
is
here.
that better? I've just turned my speaker down.
Yeah, that's heaps better.
Oh, is it? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I can still hear you, but yeah.
So if you were to say in a couple of sentences what the Dharma of your mission is, how would you frame that?
My Dharma is to be a voice for the silenced people in the East and in these factories they may not be in the East, to be honest. They may be undercurrent in all of our countries. These people have been sometimes brought to countries like Italy, actually up the road from me there was a case of fast fashion recently, a fast fashion company that were paying them barely minimum wage. I mean, it was like slave labor, which was just up the road from me. So yeah, my mission is to really be a voice for the shadows that run through the threads, the fibers of our clothing, actually to bring that to the light and make us all see that we are responsible for our second skin. And the reason why I translate this into soul style is because when we connect to our soul essence and we connect to the earth, we understand that everything is sacred, and everything, including what we placing our body, we've really done that piece around the food. And now also what we actually wear is so vital to, being the mature, I guess, not just light worker, but mature human on the planet that's going to take responsibility for the people, for the planet, and also for ourselves. How will this second skin elevate us and make us feel that deep sense of core beauty that lives within us?
That is so beautiful. I'm just absorbing that. There's something captivating about this second skin that we have being kind of radiant in its own way and emanating out into the world and being magnetic. Before we jump into exploring your beautiful soul style work, and I'm almost would love, and when we get to that point, to ask you to lead us in something just little so we can get a taste of how we can experience that. I'd love to explore with you and introduce you as also a highly sensitive person.
Mm.
And I was wondering if you could say a little bit about what it's like for you to be a sensitive person. How do you experience that?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just turning my sound up and down, so sorry if there's a little beep. Just want to make sure that you can hear. Yeah, so being a sensitive person began for me at birth. And as a child, I was very sensitive to the way I read energy is definitely through the vibration of people around me. But also I always had a very open third eye center. So I saw a lot of things as a child. So I tended to just see the other world. It was almost like everything was very open when I was a little girl. And I just knew a lot in my body. Like I knew, and I used to tell adults that I knew things, and they would say, no, that's not reality. Come back to reality. So I think my journey with being a sensitive is that, you know, I think we're born with our gifts, and we're born with this, whatever that gift is to you. I mean, there's all the different clair essences to tune into, and I definitely was a seer, and I had the feeling in my body as well, like a whole body reaction to things. And I think you know, the shutdown happened for me in my childhood because I was told that it was scary. In fact, horror films were really big in, like, for some reason in my childhood. My mum was a real crime novelist. You know, she wanted to read the crime. She wanted to watch, I don't know, all of the kind of crime stuff. And then I got into horror films, and it almost made me close down. I was like, oh my gosh, this is bad. So then I went through a big kind of reawakening to that in my late teens when I was at university, and I was really in fear of the spirit that wanted to move through me. I felt that it was a, you know, an end, something dark. I was like, oh my god, and I, you know, run away, and actually I slept with a friend for like half of that year at uni because I was so freaked out by what was going on in the house. And I think, like, the big thing for me was like actually surrendering to the fact that these things that I was feeling were real, and they were pure, and it was truth. And it felt like just dropping all of the illusions that I'd clutched onto, that it wasn't real. Almost, well, it took actually a divorce. I went through a major kind of life crisis to then, which again we could call a spiritual awakening, because then everything fell apart. But what really came through was actually the clarity of sight and the clarity of all my chakras being very clear, because I'd let go of the false attachment to I guess this, you know, creating something that wasn't actually in alignment. So I'd let go of this big, you know, kind of I guess karmic relationship, we might want to call it. And then for me, the sight began to come through, and then all of my guides wanted to commune with me, and it was like, and they'd wake me up in the night, and I'd be like, oh hello, 2 a.m, and then I'm like, oh right, we're having a team, you know, meeting here. And I think so, I guess, like, yeah, being a sensitive can feel scary at times, depending on where you are in your journey. And I think it's the deepening of trust into the fact that you know, whatever your vibration is, like wherever it feels true in your body, whether you're hearing it or whether you're seeing it. It's like checking in whether this is, you know, what this energy is showing you. But yeah, it's been a real journey, and I think it's really helped me to then move into this work, realizing that I wasn't going mad by stepping out of the kind of corporate scene in 2011 and then training as a yoga teacher. I was coming home, you know, but actually what, you know, the outside world was like, oh my God, you're leaving your job. Like, what is going on here? You're sick, you're off work for 6 months. This looks really, you know, horrific. Actually, it was a real time of deep surrender to then sort of change, you know, pivot me onto my mission. But it didn't look pretty. And all of those all those frequencies that I was feeling in those factories, you know, it was in me. It was like, oh, it felt heavy, but at the time I thought, oh, it's me. I can't perform in the right way in this job. It's the job. You know, there was so much blame outside. I hadn't gone inside to see what was going on and see what was moving through. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, I was so sensitive to the energy of fast fashion and what it was doing to the planet, what it was doing to the people. But hadn't woken up to that at that point.
Wow, thank you for and sharing a bit of that. You need to turn your sound down again.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
A little bit of feedback. I just wanted to say that one of the things that really touches me listening to you tell your story is how you went from uncertainty and almost being shut down in these gifts and abilities that are so central to your sensitivity to reclaiming them. And listening to you talk and knowing you, and I hope other people who are enjoying this can really feel that about Kerry, that she's come into such deep alignment and trust of your sensitivity and your gifts and who you are. And they are literally, your sensitivity is literally this amazing guide that's showing you what's right moment to moment to moment and deeper into your very unique mission.
Mm. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I think as you surrender to your gifts, your sensitivity, and knowing that that is your power, it then brings you in alignment to your purpose, because you are reclaiming the guidance that is already innate. So being sensitive, we're taught, aren't we, in society, that it's like it's been a bad thing almost. It's like it's weak, it's not strong. And in that linear framework is that it's similar to like climbing that corporate ladder, because where is the end goal in that? Where is the happiness in keep going, keep doing? And the being didn't fit into that at all. Like my being able to be aware or to have space, there was no room for space in that 9-to-5 corporate kind of structure for me. So then to come back home to my feeling body and my seeing self, like myself as a seer, I could then bring awareness to the bigger, the kind of like the macro. I could zoom out more and actually feel what was happening, rather than be so in it and just caught in the entanglement of like day to day to day to day. And I remember that feeling, just there was no room for the sensitivity used to burn out, and I've got a lot of air and fire in my chart, and I would just keep going with this thing, and then it would just like I'd burn out. So I think, yeah, with sensitivity there's so much that you can I don't know, it then when you reclaim that, it then it kind of regenerates you onto your path, so you are full and you can give and you can offer your basket of gifts. So yeah. Mm.
Beautiful. And I wanted to do turning the speaker up and down, maybe just leave it half. Does that work? Let's
What's
see.
that? Turn it.
If you leave the speaker halfway, and then let's see how that
Okay.
goes.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's heaps
Is
better. It
that?
was just up a
Oh, that's
lot,
good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'll do that. Yeah.
and that'll free you to. We can just like it'll be
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
and we'll have great sound. So I'm wondering, that is so moving and beautiful, and I think you really model that. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping that people will be able to be inspired by, about how sensitivity isn't something to be ashamed about or hide, but it's actually this power that allows our, what's behind us and wanting to come through us to emanate through us, and also to guide us and to get us even like more and more refined and exquisite into the deepest truth of what we're here to share and teach and lead and offer. And also it just keeps deepening that truth more and more and more, and feeding it more and more, and that makes it even juicier. And on that note, I was wondering if you could tell us, if you could take us on a journey, like if we were going to work with you, and if I was going to discover my soul style, can you take me on a journey of what that might look like, and what your vision for supporting me is about?
Yeah. So when we begin to work together, we really start with what is there. So we start in that space of what is. So we're not. Oh yeah. So turn it up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, it's such a dance. And let everyone who's listening, we had a technical issue with Kerry's headset, which wouldn't work. So we're just playing with the technology.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So when we begin, we start with this journey of what is. So we come into this, we start with awareness. We start with, I call it getting naked. So we get naked to the truth of of really how we feel, because, you know, when we, as we are at this stage in the culture, many souls are awakening to connecting to the piece around self-love, and, you know, maybe adopting more of a spiritual lifestyle. And at the same time, there is this thread of programming that is like an imprint that is within us. And it, you know, if we haven't done kind of the work to really untangle that piece, and it's a practice, like day to day. So we start with getting really naked with what is in the psyche around clothing, around our bodies, around the stories that are entangled within the body. So our body image, how we feel about ourselves on a deep level. So it's not just like this self-help level where we're in the mind and we're like, okay, I feel, you know, my body is my friend, cool, okay, done, tick. I've had my rose bath, I'm done. You know, self-love, tick. It's like, no, how do you really relate to yourself? So we go deep within the codes of the body, and we do some different practices that really bring you in contact. So sometimes they can be confronting. You know, sometimes we have to really get honest with ourselves and see ourselves almost for like the first time. And then we will look at the body of clothing, the collection of clothing that we've already bought. So we tend to look at what, you know, what we've aspired to, what masks we've worn, what tribes we've wanted to belong to. So many times we've bought things from a wounded place. So we think about the wounded feminine. I work with the archetypal journey of maiden to mother. So I work around bringing women from crossing the threshold from that wounded, infantilized maiden into a mature mother energy of the great mother, mature feminine. So when we, you know, in society, we haven't really been taught how to cross these thresholds ourselves. So even when I had my first child, I remember feeling like a maiden inside and having a baby and being like, okay, but I still feel like this young child almost of the world. How do I move my energy into mother? So when we look at our clothing pieces, we then begin to see and unravel the stories of the wounded feminine that are maybe within our clothing. So it may be that we have hidden our beautiful shape. I work with many women that have lots of loose garments. They don't want to show their curves, that, you know, there's a tender piece around their sexuality and how they would like that to be shown in the world, and the fear of the male gaze. So we worked at how we can dismantle that, working with the edge, you know, the edge of that kind of excitable edge. You know, how can we play with this? Can we move that boundary? What would feel safe and what feels comfortable? I am obviously an expert on body shape. I've worked with models for many years, so I understand how to achieve that optimal kind of fit and bring out your best assets with your own body. So many women do not know what suits them. So we work to look at the body shape and say, hey, you've got these amazing, you know, these shoulders, or you've got this beautiful waist. How can we bring this through? You know, can we play with this and get curious? So we work in that way, and I teach, like, very practically how we can bring these assets alive. And then, you know, from there, the collection of clothing will start to sort based on that information. So you'll start to go, okay, this needs to go. I'm not that woman anymore. And it may be the thing that I call them, like, hanging ghosts in your collection. It's almost like they're waiting for the time that they may be able to be worn again. But many times they either don't fit, or there's something we wore in our 20s and we're still hanging on. And so we work to create a collection that is circular. Actually, our collection is living and alive, and we can create outfits from it. Rather than, okay.
Tickle in my throat, sorry everybody.
Oh, love. So rather than collections of clothing that is all separate, and, you know, maybe we've like, oh, that's for my yoga class and that's for, I don't know, a wedding. It's almost like, how can we move these into outfits that we really wear day to day? So that's the aim. It's to get this real working, sustainable, practical collection that feels like you. And so that's the first bit, is kind of like getting naked to what is. And then the next, you know, following sessions are really about plugging into your highest muse, this inspiration, almost like a deva or a, you know, a guide. It's like, what symbols are there? What is your, you know, how do you see beauty in the world? What does beauty mean to you? So we go in this inner realm to really kind of explore how the outer would look for you. And it's unique for every woman. It's, you know, we all come in with different blueprints, with different languages, with different style codes. And you know, I really help you to guide you into that clarification, because, you know, many times we're just like, oh, that's for me, I love that, you know, especially with the way that we scroll and buy these days. It's like, oh, that looks nice, I'm gonna have that. We want to really consume in this conscious way that is like treating clothes as this sacred investment, rather than just this quick transactional fast fashion. It's like, how can we slow down and take that pause to know that that is the kind of aesthetic that we really want to have, and that's going to really suit us. It's going to bring out our best qualities. So we have a collection that is not just practical, but it's going to last you for a longer period of time. It really feels resonant with your essence and your qualities and who you are as a woman and where you've been and your heritage. And, you know, we go into all of that to marry up this this equation that's like, oh yeah, of course, this is me. And I call it majesty. When a woman fully embodies and inhabits her body and inhabits the highest essence, I call it majesty. And you know, some people call that embodiment. but it's really like, how can we bring you through? How can you step fully into this queen kind of essence? So yeah, that, and there's so many different tools and guidance strategies along the way, that we do this in a kind of we go at different paces for different clients. You know, I really listen into the feminine and what the woman in front of me needs. So sometimes, you know, she's like got a wedding to do and she's like, I need it to happen in, you know, I don't know, 3 months time. So we may work to that goal, but it may happen in 4 weeks, and we you know, we kind of need to get it done for, I don't know, a business event. But I work with many different clients for many different reasons, but many are, it's this identity piece of like wanting to feel like them again, wanting to reclaim who they really are. So yeah, I hope that explains.
Beautiful, thank you. And when a woman comes to you and she's struggling to feel good about her body shape or size, or it doesn't fit into, you know, these norms and means of these impossible ideas and expectations, which very few women fit into, around looking a certain way and having the right body shape, how do you support a woman there? Like, what ways do you get them to feel and sense into something different? And like, that's, I imagine that's a really important piece to even to be able to take the next steps.
Yeah, there's a grief process sometimes. You know, if somebody so did you ask the question about body shape, or was it
Yeah,
about, yeah.
body shape, or I looked this way and then I got older and, you know, I went into
Yeah,
menopause, or I had a baby and my body changed, and
yeah,
or I never looked like the person in the magazine. I mean, I know certainly when I was a teenager, I mean, I'm from a Middle Eastern background, so I was short and I had a butt and I was curvy, and it didn't matter how athletic I was, that butt was still there.
yeah.
So I never really, I had to like find myself in my own way, because I didn't fit into any of those ideals.
Yeah, and there's a beauty myth out there, and that is a big piece that I teach, is that none of us are going to fit into the optimal beauty standard. You know, nobody fits into that, not even the catwalk models. I used to work with catwalk models, and they were being crucified for not being, not, you know, they had to keep up with their measurements. They were trying to control themselves to still fit into that. So none of us have a freedom and liberation of fully being accepted in societal standard of what beauty is, which is why I bring women away to unplug from the magazine culture and you know, the way we've been drip fed and broadcast the message of beauty is toxic. And the way that aging is kind of we disappear when we hit 40, right? It's like, that is not in the marketing anywhere. It's almost like you hit 40 and society just thinks that you've gone. And Marion Woodman talks about, she's a feminist Jungian writer, and she talks about, you know, trying to hail down a cab at 41 and just being complete in New York, and just, no, she couldn't do it. And she realized in that moment that she had to die to the world, to the culture, so that she could be reborn into her own life. And I think that's such a huge thing for women, is that actually we have to have these mini deaths to actually be able to step into our greatness. You know, when we release our attachment to the culture, which is the beauty, Western beauty standard, you know, the white woman that has no real curves, that is, you know, 6 foot. It's like, oh, and I identify with what you said, Myree, because I am a mixed heritage background, half Jamaican and half British and English. And, you know, I grew up and suddenly I sprouted hips at 10, and I was like, holy, you know. And then people used to talk about my butt at school, and I was like, what, it's just a butt, you know. I did not understand, but I was a totally, the African woman in me started to come through, and dressing for that, with a whole lot of white friends, actually, because I grew up in quite a suburban area, in England, and yeah, like just feeling that disconnect from my own body has been a whole reclamation. So when I work with women that are feeling that, because our body shifts and changes through different life phases. So like menopause, we're gonna have these shifts, we're gonna have different softness things going on in the body because of the hormones. It's the same when we have children and babies, and it's the same when we hit teenage. So there's all these, teenage to into womanhood. There's all of these rites of passage with our body that we don't see out there as like a thing. So we've had to like almost go in to our houses, and we've kind of crucified our bodies for not fitting into the norm, where actually this is a natural phenomenon. Our body's going to change and shift, and it's beautiful. It's this elevation of the feminine. It's, the goddess working through us. And so I feel like these archetypal journeys are so important to reclaim for women, to say, this is natural. This is my power, in fact, that I'm moving and I'm changing and I'm evolving. So it's the acceptance piece. It's accepting ourselves on a whole body, all the levels in the body, to know that we are exactly, beautiful in this now moment, rather than when we've lost that mate, or when we've, had nips and tucks. Like I've got friends that said to me yesterday or the day before about plastic surgery, and I was like, oh gosh, do people want that? I was like, oh wow. And plastic surgery is on the rise, and many young people are having it now. And obviously, when we hit certain age factors, we desire to have different things. And I just think the self-love has been almost like an overlay of a concept that actually needs to drop down deeply into the body to be a felt experience. So we can't put just a plaster over the wound and think that it's going to just be fine. It's like, how do we go into that wound, and how would it look to dive a little bit deeper into what it is, what's there? When we go a little bit deeper into what is there, we then can reclaim the jewels of that experience and say, oh, actually, this is not real for me. I am amazing. Like we can really dive in and reclaim our sovereignty as women. So yeah, that's kind of the piece on that. I hope that answers the question. I talk in circles. I'm like a feminine, like try and come back to the point.
It was perfect. It was so beautiful. And there was something you touched on there, which was two really important things. One, about almost dying to what we've been fed, right? Dying to the ideas and the images, and being willing. And I think it takes courage, right? And guidance, in a way, to be able to die and put those things aside, and also to die to what your body was in 15 and 25 and 35 and 45. That almost, in a way, a woman is being continually invited to die to what was and come into relationship with what's emerging. And I love how you reframe it as all this kind of softening and change, and it's so beautiful. It's very, very healing just to hear that spoken about by someone who has lived that and owned that and died to that and reborn in that in your own way. You really transmit that. And I was really curious, because I think sensitive people are especially acutely aware of the falsities that are placed on them, right? That when something's off, a sensitive person really knows it and feels that, whether it's the clothes I'm wearing feel off, or the way I've been taught to think about my body feels off, that there's this way we can use our sensitivity and to really trust what it's telling us about our clothes and the way we've been taught to think about ourselves and our bodies and who we are as women. And I was wondering if you could speak to women if they're having those kind of signals, if they're receiving those kind of messages and they don't know what to do with them or make of them.
Yeah, I mean, when I really woke up to this piece on fast fashion, to be honest, it wasn't when I left fast fashion. I knew there was a discordant energy with where I was in my career, but I didn't put the piece, I still went into the shops and bought fast fashion after I left. So it took me many years and actually many pilgrimages inside my body and actually outside. I had to do a lot of goddess work and going into my womb temple and really communing on that level, and to really then reclaim this feminine sensitivity as a power. I always thought the feminine was weak, that part of me. I really didn't see how the patriarchal kind of energy actually could be in a woman's body. I mean, I thought of my some of my closest family members as very feminine, but it was almost like the patriarchy was playing through it. The toxic masculine was really in them. And so actually, understanding what the quality of femininity means within my body is, for me, really relates to my sensitivity. It's like, how can I resensitize myself to pleasure? How can I resensitize myself to pain? How can I resensitize myself to holding grief and to holding, the heart medicine and love, and all of those sensitivities being in my body felt like I could feel frequency on another level. So when I then smelt a flower, it was like, oh my God, it's like the ecstasy of life became alive to me again through the portal of connecting with the earth more and being with the flavors of this feminine Shakti, which was rage, which actually a lot of rage came through for me when I first began this journey. A lot of anger, a lot of untapped emotion spilled from me, but I had to hold space for those. I feel like when we are going into when we reclaim that we are a sensitive, we are actually allowing everything that we've almost held back to go, oh, it's here. And then, when somebody is feeling that maybe, block with how they feel about their bodies and how they feel about clothing, when I hit that point of the resensitizing, that's when I was like, what am I doing? I pieced together the fast fashion and how I was living my life. And so I think it's like this lived embodied experience. That is the next stage. It's action, because we can know all of these things in our mind, but how are we connecting that in our body? What are we then taking a sip of, next? It's like, how does it translate? So for me, it was like, okay, I have to connect these dots. So it's great to have awareness, and that is the very first step, is education. Find out about sustainability, find out about the brands that you're buying from. What is their mission really? Like, what are their values? Are they treating their factories in a fair way? Are they really taking ownership for some of the sustainable development goals that the UN brought through? So there's a big research piece that is a very mind piece. So when you have gather that awareness, and you may have watched documentaries before and taken in the information, and then a week later you're like, okay, I need a new dress, I'm gonna go. So we know that it doesn't always sometimes hit in the mind. We have to go deeper with it. So then how do we take it to the next layers and the next levels? And that is really about sitting in that space of what am I, you know, the action piece. I feel all of these essence, you know, I feel these qualities that don't feel good. My experience was I had a Zara dress that was beautiful. It was all embroidered with flowers. It was very much the kind of thing I would love. And actually people kept saying, wow, I love that dress on you. Wow, you know, it's your colors, it's amazing. And I felt the shame and the guilt that I was still plugged into fast fashion, knowing what I know. So for me, it was like, that's when I knew that the emotion, the shame that was coming through every time someone mentioned it, I couldn't wear the dress anymore because it was so it felt like an old skin. It felt like a discomfort to wear it. Even though that outer beauty was there, I knew the message, the threads running through were just not in alignment with my knowing and what I knew to be true. So I think it's taking the research and taking it out of the mind and taking it, sipping it down into the body. So how can I make a conscious change with my actions? So that would be the kind of the first step of how to really, not just be aware, but actually, what am I doing now with that awareness?
It's so really very true. I just noticed a little bit of feedback again that
I'll go on mute. I don't know if that will help.
that one of the things that I noticed when I first started to wear things that were made out of organic or silk or handmade, like I could feel the frequency difference in my aura. Have you noticed that too? Like I remember putting on like a hand-dyed, handmade silk shawl that was ethically produced, and the vibrational experience, I was like, I want everything to feel this good. I not necessarily, you know, could I afford to have like the high end of all of those things, but how do I choose things that honor the earth, that have that beautiful energy of frequency and integrity and sustainability, and have that through my aura and experience the beauty of that? I can still feel like, even when I'm doing my yoga and I wrap my head in an organic bandage compared to just something that's like normally made, the vibrational difference.
Yeah, that's so key. That actually the projection of ourselves then elevates, you know, it actually, you know, if you think about all of the practices that you're doing, and maybe it's breath work, maybe it's yoga, but actually then you're really expanding your auric field. If then you're putting on a second skin that is kind of entrenched with some of these pieces around racism, oppression, and the fact that there's 80% women that are kind of in this structure of fast fashion, many slaves that have no voice are entrenched in that. If we're then layering our bodies with those codes, it's almost like the expansion of, and the integrity and the alignment and the authenticity is kind of blocked a little bit by this. And when you are aware of that, putting that on is like, I liken it to wearing you know, like a snake having shed its skin, squeezing itself back into it again, knowing that it's not, you know, that's not the natural way anymore. So it feels like that when you're putting something on that's not in alignment. It's like, oh, I don't want, you know, I don't feel to wear this. So yeah, there is, and the opposite of that is exactly how you've described. It's like, wow, the essence of it feels different and it has a story. And you know, when people ask you then about it, it's like, well, these amazing women in this place made it, and I'm really supporting them by investing in that, and it holds value, and it holds a deeper sense of wisdom and ancestry. You know, it holds everything in our hands. It tells a story of all the hands that have made it. And all fashion is handmade. All clothing is not made by robots. It's all handmade. So the amount of hands that run through the clothing pieces that we wear is phenomenal. And that is a piece that people never identify with as well, that actually these clothes are made by somebody at the end of the day, and it might have been through so many different processes to get to be one piece of clothing. So yeah, I think it's also ancestry. It's connecting to the fact that clothing used to be made in a slow, circular, regenerative way, where we were tending to the earth. There were small units that were made. Maybe they were made by somebody down the road, near, you know, locally to you. And that we're kind of heading, if we can bring it back to that, you know, buying more local, not just with our food, but also with our clothing, and also just knowing what the ingredients are, just like we would with looking into the ingredients packet on a, you know, a superfood. It's like, okay, so what is in this? You know, what is the dye, I wonder? It's getting really curious, like what is the fabric content? Where does that fabric come from? All of those kind of exploration questions, just opening your mind to the fact that clothing isn't just there in a shop with strip lights in a shopping mall. It's like this is derived from somewhere. So how, you know, looking into, yeah, just feeling into that. And also we normally, not normally, but you know, years ago, I know, I mean, my mum she went into seamstress classes. That was all running through school, and that's gone now. But my heritage, you know, they made lace and crochet, and if you look back not too far in your ancestry, there will be somebody in your family line that used to make clothing or make fabric. So I find that fascinating, that we've almost lost the essence of clothing from our heritage, and from our hands. And so, yeah, there is a disconnect there with, especially in the Western world, of how we relate to it as just something that is, it's made, it's in a shop, let's buy it, you know?
Totally. And I guess I would say to that, and both of us know a dear friend of mine, Nazreen Sheikh, and she herself was a child slave in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
And I think when you meet a beautiful human, yes, who as a child had no choice but to be, basically, she lived and worked in the same room. She never really left this one really small room with this other group of children all making clothes. And when you feel the heart of a person who's affected by fast fashion, and you realize that that's not just someone on the other side of the world, but someone you have come to love and who is a miracle themselves, that they can actually get out of that circumstance. And she's now a world leader trying to change women's concepts of fashion. That to me, that like, I can't go back to fast fashion when I really tasted and it was made that real for me.
Yeah, wow. Nazreen is such a guiding light in this work, and she's been a pure inspiration to me and so many others. And that's how we came to really meet. Like I said, I'd really love, this woman really inspires me. And we'd just met, and we were in the queue in a cafe, and I said, there's this woman, and she gave me goosebumps, and she was a child slave. And you said, Nazreen, and I said, yes. And there was this connection straight away between us, wasn't there? So Nazreen was like a dot, like connected a dot, a really big code of what this means, this fast fashion, and how we can unplug from it. And that was part of our connection. So yeah, thank you for bringing her name into this conversation.
And I'll put Nazreen's details in the bio for this if you want to also connect with Nazreen, because she's an incredible leader and we both really admire her. I wanted to ask if you were able to, like, maybe just guide us for a minute or two, if you were to, like, invite us into our sensitive sensing nature and we were to go on a little journey to begin to connect with something to do with this muse, right? Could you lead us in a little like inner work where we could get to taste what that's like? Because for me, that's so mysterious and appealing.
Yeah, sure. So if everybody would like to just close their eyes and just become really comfortable wherever you are, wherever you find yourself, just taking a moment to find your roots, find the ground beneath you, and taking a slow breath into the belly and just connecting your energy with the energy of the earth. Just grounding and anchoring yourself to the here and the now. Knowing that there's no rush and there's just pure spaciousness. You're coming home to just being connected, grounded, rooted. And just taking your breaths down and in, down. And as you exhale, allowing that breath to go down back to the earth, so you're connecting in, rooting down. Continuous breath. So just feeling that you are sat here or just rooted down as if you're like a pyramid or a triangle, just with a heavy base. The heavy base is rooting and connected. And then at the tip of the head, at the crown of the head, there's the tip of the prism, the tip of the triangle, upward pointing triangle. So you're feeling that softness in the belly, that connected, anchored awareness to the belly of the earth holding you here. And then you begin to feel this fine point, this lightness at the crown of the head. And beginning to take the breath in through the nostril, consciously breathing in through the left, and then breathing out through the right. So you're tracing this shape going all the way up to the crown of the head with the breath. And as you exhale, you're coming down and in and across. So now imagining that you are entering a garden in the night with a full moon above your head, and you're walking around this beautiful garden. Maybe there's flowers and all the smells. It's a sensory experience. Just knowing that all of the people that love you the most are standing with you. And you see a spiral staircase at the bottom of the garden, and you begin to walk towards the staircase and slowly ascend the stairs one by one, taking your energy up, still breathing consciously through the left side and out through the right. And as you find yourself at the top of the staircase, you come to the stars, the galaxies, up and up, bringing your energy and rising up and up, higher and higher, ascending into this open space. Feeling in your heart this essence of openness, of oneness. And as you feel that you're in the presence of all of the stars twinkling and these fragments of yourself almost reflecting back at you, knowing that you're connected to everything. Keep breathing and then coming to this temple space. However that looks for you. Maybe it's a golden, exquisite, elaborate temple that looks so luxurious. You enter the door, and as you step in, you see a room in the far corner. You make your way there. And this room is like a chamber, circular chamber, like a salon. When you enter and you feel the qualities of the room, the colors and the flavors. Maybe there's paintings on the wall. And you notice that this is a room full of mirrors. And you walk around the room and you turn to look in the mirror. In this moment, you see a glimpse of a woman staring back at you. Maybe this is a woman that you recognize. And she emits this queen essence to you. And as you open your heart, you feel the transmission of her presence. What does she look like? What is she wearing? Take your time to trace every part of her, the symbols. And when this feels complete, you can gesture a thank you and then move to the next mirror. When you turn to see your reflection, maybe the reflection begins to shapeshift. Maybe you see videos, might be yourself. And maybe it's a higher muse essence that wants to be revealed to you. So feeling her entering your heart, looking her in the eyes, and feeling this transmission of your highest essence. Seeing what she is wearing, the symbols, the colors, the sounds, the smells, the drape. And when this feels complete, you begin to move into the center of the room. And you stand in the center and you feel that all of the mirrors are beginning to shapeshift, and you're surrounded by these qualities of your blueprint, these symbols of your heritage, your DNA, the highest essence of soul, who you are, beginning to enter you through your fingertips, through your forehead, through the back of your heart, your hara, your roots, your feet. Feeling these energies coming into you now. And then when this feels complete, placing your hands over your heart, taking these messages back out through the temple door, closing the door behind you in completion, and then finding the top of the staircase, beginning to descend down step by step, bringing your energy back down, back into your body, back into the here and the now. Step by step, coming back down, knowing that you are welcomed by the people that love you the most, back into this loving garden. So taking some deep breaths just to ground yourself, connecting yourself back to the base. Softness in the belly, softness in the face, rooting down into the earth. Take some breaths into the earth. And then when you're ready, you can begin to come back into the room. Maybe flickering the eyes open. Maybe rubbing the palms together. And just touching your face or touching on any place that needs it. Just feeling that heat. You can do that a few times if you need to. And then just having a look around the room, welcoming yourself back, looking behind you, looking at the ground, feeling a sense of safety and awareness in where you are. And I would suggest writing down anything that came through for you from that, that little journey. There may be colours or textures or silhouettes. So that's just an entry into the muse, and we go deeper into that in the journeys that I share. So yeah, thank you.
That was so. Thank you, Kerry, so much. I'm definitely going to do that again. I found the first time I did, the first woman I saw had an amazing kind of, she was an Indigenous woman with this profound, like, feathered headdress. And the second woman was very Rubenesque, I would say, and draped. And I would love to go back and gaze in the other mirrors and keep drawing. It's almost like drawing on the ancient feminine as well, and these many expressions of the feminine, and weaving it in, and really healing this very narrow, very white, very colonial idea of what beauty is, and remodeling it in a way and claiming it from the diversity of places that dwells in. And I can feel how powerful that is, to keep weaving that together. And if you do this and you have an experience, please feel free to leave a comment about what you discovered, because I think it's definitely worth returning and doing that little journey again with Kerry, and joining her somewhere in real life and doing that journey with her.
Yeah, the work goes deeper. That's just like a little tiny glimpse really into how it would feel to see her. And there's such a, when we start to tap into that place, there's then a blossoming, an allowance to express the woman that we are on such a deep level, that's the soul level. So that's why the work that I do is soul styling, because I feel like we can't take the soul out of dressing and adornment and fashion, because when we remove our soul from those places, we are literally wearing a mask. We're literally buying into a culture that, like you said, doesn't support all the different expressions and flavors of the great goddess. And that's what we are. We are so many faces of her, we're so many flavors of her. And when we unplug from the beauty myth, we begin to get so excited about the flavors that we already have and the soul essence that wants to shine. So it's such an important piece to begin to open up to the expansion when it comes to style, when it comes to beauty, and when it comes to how, and it could be branding. You know, I've worked with clients that actually this work has gone into their branding. They're like, oh my god, my whole website has to be of this frequency now. So it's almost like we start with the clothes, and then it leads you onto your purpose and your branding and how you want to show up in the world in that aesthetic, or in that kind of transmission of who you are. So yeah, we start with clothing, but it can just like ripple into everything else.
Yeah, I feel like in a way it's encouraging a kind of like a radical awareness shift, and I can feel how that's happened in myself, even in those few precious moments that we did. And I think that the opportunity for women, as we're becoming empowered and entrepreneurs and leaders and teachers and creatives and healers, and really stepping out into the world, sharing our gifts, that finding a way that the resonance of who we are is very integrous through all the ways where we're kind of sending a signal of who we are, and that as women, finding a way that what you wear and the way you dress and what you put in your ears and the colors you wear around you, the way that they also are resonant with that signal, and in fact how that, what you were just speaking about, the way they can actually amplify the message. And that doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money on these items, but that they are kind of luminous and vibrate with who you are. And I want to really encourage you, wherever you are in the world, that is possible for you, that you can experience this exquisite resonance. And I'm sure if you're watching this as a video, that you can see that in Kerry, that she's very unified in a way, in the way she's expressing her message in her second skin and her heart and her soul, and the emanation of her message. And I really want to encourage all women just to take a moment and contemplate, or go back and do that little meditation again, because I believe almost all of us have been deeply injured by our culture and how we relate to ourselves as women. And I want to encourage you that you can get out of those constraints that limit any sense of you being beautiful. My work that I do is helping women and all beings to connect to that deep power and beauty, and that you find this really amazing way to help them to give this like very physical expression is such a gift, Kerry. And I was wondering, we're just about at the end of our time, and I want to like just kind of lead into, if you loved what Kerry was sharing about and you'd like to learn more, she's got a number of programs and she's got a beautiful offering that starts next week. So I want to invite you, Kerry, if we want to adorn ourselves and really express our soul in this way and heal our relationship with our beauty, how do we find you, and what are some things that you're offering?
Yeah, well, so the best thing to do would be to sign up to my mailing list, because I offer like free kind of downloads on the muse and the mood, and really for me that's like the earth wisdom of what's happening. So the sustainability piece, but also the muse of like how we aspire to this beauty piece on an external, and how we can see that in the world. So I offer like a bi-weekly newsletter, and that's quite an easy way to kind of plug into my work. And then I also offer like sessions they range from like radical, quick, kind of super high vibe 90-minute sessions that you get like a transmission of my work, to all the way to working one-to-one over these longer journeys that I talked about at the beginning, which is called the Art of Rebirth, which is literally like we go in to then rise into our queen self. So they're like the one-to-one things that I do. I'm launching, oh, there's an alarm outside. That must be, I don't know, a clarion call. So I've just launched a course that begins next week, and there's still space in that container, but I'm limiting it to only a small, rich group of women that, and when I say rich, I don't mean just wealthy rich, I mean rich in like the tapestry of who they want to become. So rich in terms of like this willingness to and readiness to really step into their majesty. And there's these really beautiful empowered women that are coming on board, and that starts next week, and it's an 8-week course, a program that I'm leading, that I've designed to do this work of the art of rebirth, but also connecting to our feminine essence. So there's a lot of embodiment rituals and practices that will be thread through that course to connect us back in, because I really feel that this up and out mind piece, you know, really, it's kind of sometimes inhibiting us from actually really feeling deep down the sovereignty. So for me, it's about this embodied body piece where we really take that medicine in and down. So I'll be really leading women through this work, and I have some amazing guest teachers that will be just adding these sprinklings of magic, so that the women get such a full kind of tapestry of the work. And when they come out, the outcome of that is really to have this collection of clothing pieces that feel so resonant to who they are and the woman that they want to shine in the world as. So it's really, there's a half and half again with my work. There always is. There's this deep kind of going within and really feeling the codes of the feminine, and then there's this like really rich practical, tangible, how do we do that in clothing then? You know, what does that really look like? So you get this, the kind of the whole journey of adornment is what I call it. And adornment is like a kind of, it's spirit made into matter. Adornment for me is like the vehicle of how clothing goes through the lens of spirituality. So how we then take clothing into that real piece of it matters, it's sacred. So I teach all of that kind of juiciness on that course, and yeah, there's still space in there, so I'll drop the link and you can connect all those dots. But yeah, there's more courses coming this year as well, and a lot of my transmission is from Venus, and so I really connect with everything to do with the planet Venus, but also the story of Inanna and Ishtar, and the goddess really comes through through this lens of Venus. So there's going to be more teachings about that this year too.
Oh, I look forward to that. And so you can find Kerry on Instagram, and of course I'll put the links underneath in the notes for this call. and you can find her on Instagram as Kerry Wilde. And she's also on Instagram she's got links to her website, and I'll also pop all of that in the call notes. Thank you, Kerry, for such a beautiful and deep. I feel like we've gone deeper and deeper, like a nano, into the underworld of women's beauty. And I really just want to stay in that temple, and I don't want to come out. But I know we need to bring this call to an end. And if you have enjoyed this call and you're a sensitive soul, if you've been inspired by Kerry as a really powerful, sensitive woman who's using and modeling how sensitivity can help you to bring beauty and power and healing and medicine into the world, and you would like to share your medicine in the world as well as a sensitive, then you can also join me in Sacred Sensitivity. It's a 6-week program, or 7 weeks actually, because I added an extra week, intensive transformative program where you get to move from feeling uncertain or ashamed or lost about being a sensitive into deep healing, understanding and resonance and ownership of your sensitivity, so that you can use that to share your gifts and your medicine and your teachings in the world, and you can shine, because we certainly need your gifts in the world. So if you're interested in that, you can check out my bio, and the links are there too. So I want to hug you across the world, Kerry. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, sister. I feel very, very blessed to receive your grace and your medicine, and the way Inanna and Ishtar and Venus shine through you. And definitely everyone follow Kerry on Instagram, because she gives big time, and you will learn a lot from her there as well. And she's an amazing dancer, and you'll discover that as well. So I want to thank you, Kerry, so much, sweetheart, for joining us today. Is there one last thing you'd like to say before we finish?
Just thank you so much, Myree. I love your work, and just the way that you're so committed to you know, uplifting and elevating humanity on this connection to the light, like being able to hold the light, shine it, and really yeah, you're just such a lighthouse, and you glow every time I see you. Your light is shining, sister. So thank you so much for all the work you do, and for allowing people to come and share their gifts as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kerry. Thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this, leave a like or a comment. Visit us on Instagram or wherever you can find us on the web. We have websites, and there are other beautiful Sensitivity Summit videos and explorations on men's work, on creativity, and on social media and sexuality. Some really good juicy topics to explore where sensitivity intersects in the world. Until next time, everyone, see you again, friends. Bye.
Bye.